Good morning and welcome to Share Talk. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Mick, who is the Executive Chairman of Thor Mining. How are you today, sir?
Very well, thanks, Stephen, and nice to talk to you again. It's we're just the end of a very pleasant late summer's day here in Adelaide, and um, there's still a little bit of summer to come, but it's the days are getting a bit shorter.
Well, are you in the grips of the heat wave still?
No. Mid to low 20s today. Touch over 30 tomorrow and the day after, and then high 20s for the rest of the week. That's almost ideal and relatively typical of this time of the year too, I guess.
Well, we've had one of the warmest winters on record. Not much snow, not much hail, not much ice in the morning, which is good for me not to
Mm.
frost in my car.
Okay.
Right,
Well, I'll be
anyway,
over there I'll be there in a couple of weeks. Hopefully the weather stays nice for it.
you'll probably bring some of your winter weather with you, because that's the change of the seasons.
Mm.
In regards to the season, we've got spring in the air coming up. So if you would like to talk to us about Spring Hill.
Indeed. Spring Hill, for the benefit of listeners who may not know the story, is a gold project in the Northern Territory that Thor have had and have worked on for a number of years. But last year, when presented with a pretty good offer by another outfit to buy it from us, we accepted that offer, and the total offer was 3.5 million Aussie dollars in two tranches. The first was tranche was $2 million, and for that we sold 60% interest in the project, and the second tranche of 1.5 million Aussie dollars due 12 months from then, which was the end of last week, and that money came in exactly on the day scheduled, which was very pleasing for us all. I've had a lot of confidence for some time that the money would come in, but there was certainly a sigh of relief when it actually did arrive, because you're always happier when it's in our account and not in the other bloke's, I guess. There's there is a royalty still to come on that, and that has a reasonable chance of commencing within, possibly even this year, but certainly in the next year or so. And for every ounce of gold produced out of Spring Hill over the next, or over the life of the mine, regardless of how long that takes, if the price of gold is below 1,500 Aussie an ounce, we get $6 an ounce. If it's above $1,500 an ounce, it's $14 an ounce. Now, most of your listeners deal in sterling. The price of gold is today about 1,600 Aussie an ounce, and it's been above 1,500 Aussie an ounce since January 2016. So I hate to forecast trends or forecast future prices in gold particularly, but it's been where we would like it to be for a little while now.
Well, that's one thing I wanted to highlight for you, Mick, and obviously I know you're aware, but the Australian dollar ounce is a lot higher than the American dollar ounce, and obviously there's still a lot of speculation surrounding the Brexit, so there could obviously be a more upward trend, if you like, and a lot of the top researchers are calling that trend and saying that it should be higher, and the fact that the gold's historically low. So I know you said you don't want to
But
speculate, but would that be your sort of overall feeling as well?
I certainly hope you're right, Stephen. And I guess with the new leader of the free world in the United States, um, planning to do all sorts of things, I suspect that the gold price is going to remain up for a little while. Equally, if he does what he plans to do with infrastructure works and lowering taxes, I suspect the US dollar will remain relatively strong compared with the Aussie dollar and possibly even strengthen a little more. And if that is the case, well, a 1,500 Aussie dollar gold price is probably something we could be relatively confident about. But others may have a different view. But I'm relatively relaxed about 1,500 Aussie for a little while at least.
Well, one of your investors came to me and said, what are your thoughts on the price staying above that cut-off point to go on to the lower sort of $6 per ounce? And I have said basically, historically, anyone spending on infrastructure in the way that Trump will be doing, and again, he stepped in, he's reopening mines, he's getting people back into work to build the infrastructure for the country. Historically, that has sent the gold prices higher. At the moment, with the prices historically so low, that sort of backs and bucks up that trend. And he came back saying that's brilliant. He went off and did his own research, and it just showed the level that is set at now is effectively too low. So he was bolstered by
let's
those
hope he's
comments,
right, Stephen.
And again, you just highlighted that as well. So
yeah, but I wouldn't rely on me as a source of financial advice when it comes to exchange rates and gold prices. But I think there's a general view that that the Aussie dollar is not likely to get a lot stronger against the US dollar than it currently is, and may well weaken a little more. And I think with uncertainty around the world about a whole host of things, I think the gold price will stay, will if anything move up. I can't see it weak going back below $1,100 US an ounce for a little while, but I have been wrong about these things before, I know.
As always, time will tell. Now, Mick, obviously the information is out there, but in relation obviously to the Spring Hill tenements, how much gold is actually being produced on those tenements?
There's been no gold production of any note for about 130 years on those tenements, Stephen. Spring Hill was mined in the 1880s by a bunch of Chinese prospectors who it is generally thought pulled upwards of 30,000 ounces out, but records weren't very well kept in those days, and I suspect they weren't very honest about declaring exactly how much they did take out. There's a number of old adits into Spring Hill. There's some underground workings where they followed some very, very high grade seams of gold down at least to the water table. We had a JORC compliant resource estimate on Spring Hill of about 400,000 ounces of gold at a cut-off grade of probably about 1.2 grams now. But I perhaps shouldn't be quoted on that. But certainly around that cut-off grade, and I would expect that over time that should improve. There is certainly gold at considerable depth. We've intersected gold at 400 metres below surface, probably at grades that might struggle to work in an underground mining scenario, but there's not a lot of drilling at that sort of depth, so one could expect that there might be more later on. with extra work. So the 400,000 ounces we had in the resource estimate was to a total depth of 150 metres below surface, and Spring Hill is called a hill for a very good reason. You knock the top off the hill, and you probably get halfway down to that 150 metres in depth. So you don't have to dig an awfully large hole in the ground to get down to 150 metres of depth. And I think 400,000 ounces as a resource therefore is quite realistic. How much of it the new owners turn into an ore reserve and pull out of the ground, well, time will tell, but I suspect it could produce somewhere between, give or take a bit, maybe 20,000 ounces a year for at least 5 or 6 years. But once again, time will tell. If it is that, we'll have a royalty stream over that period, which is quite attractive.
Indeed, and obviously with the JORC compliant resource, even if you're not getting that amount per year, and it's a lesser amount, the mine life will just be longer. So
exactly, they'll have to mine at a certain rate to make it work for them financially, and if the price of gold comes up, they'll take a bit more because they can mine to a lower cut-off grade. If the price of gold drops off, well, there might be a little bit less because they may be forced to mine to a higher cut-off grade. But there is a reasonable amount of gold there at Spring Hill, and in many ways, I was sorry to see the project go. But in difficult times, we do what we have to do.
Indeed, and obviously the good thing about Thor mining is that you've got more than one project. And obviously another exciting one is on your tungsten project at Pilot Mountain. Could you highlight the sort of future news flow there?
Yeah, sure, Stephen. We flagged a few weeks ago a drilling program starting quite soon at Pilot Mountain. We are held up by unseasonally or unusually heavy snow in the area, which made access unsafe. That appears to have all melted and gone away. The local folk have been around with graders and cleared the track, and our exploration manager is flying over this coming weekend with the objective of starting the drill program early next week. Now, I'm not going to give an exact day because I've turned up on site at drilling programs on a number of occasions, and the drill contractor gets there and then finds he's missed a part or he's got something wrong with his gear and he can't start for a day or so. So we will obviously give the market some notice or update the market when drilling commences, but at this stage I believe it should be early next week. And we're very, very keen on Pilot Mountain. There's two things we're looking to do in this particular drilling program. The first of them is to drill for extensions of some very high grade multi-commodity intersections from the last drill program there about 4 years ago. And in that drill program at the Desert Scheelite resource, because we have a resource estimate on that particular deposit, we intersected 17.5 metres that, well, we're saying 5.7% copper equivalent. It's almost 1% tungsten, it's 1.8% copper, there's 2.2% zinc, plus an ounce of silver in this particular intersection. It was the last hole that was drilled in that program. They were not permitted to drill any more holes, and a little while after that, they sold the project to Thor Mining because they wanted to take the company in a different direction, which is fine. So we've wanted to follow up on that intersection for some time. We now have the funds to do it, and we're getting after that next week. The second thing we're doing in the program is twinning some old holes on another deposit nearby that we call Garnet. And this is a program of twinning holes drilled by Union Carbide on this deposit in the 1970s. We have all the information we would normally require on this deposit to declare a JORC resource estimate, except for the last and primary piece of evidence, I guess, which is the drill cuttings from that program. We don't have the core or the cuttings, and so we are prevented from declaring a JORC compliant resource on the deposit. Our resource guy working with us has told us if you put half a dozen holes in here, on this one, etc., and come up with the results that match the drill logs, he will quite quickly declare a resource on that deposit. I sincerely hope we do match those outcomes, and if so, we should have a resource estimate on Garnet. I'm guessing sometime early April, but that's a forecast, not rather than anything else at this stage. So it's certainly not drilling in the hope that we'll get some mineralisation. It's drilling in the absolute belief that and knowledge that there is a deposit there, and that it was drilled a number of years ago, and we're just following up to confirm and to get the cuttings required for the resource geologist to come up with his estimate.
Can I just touch on that with you? Is it a case of you don't know where the core samples are from the previous drillings, or is it a case of you just cannot acquire them?
Stephen, this work was done by Union Carbide in the 1970s. At the time, they were operating a very large tungsten mine just out of a town called Bishop in California, roughly 100 miles away. I would not be at all surprised if those samples were taken back to Bishop, which was because that was the headquarters for Union Carbide at the time. But look, we're talking since then. We've had the 80s, the 90s, and the 10s, and now we're in the halfway into the teens of the following century. A lot of time has passed, and we just don't know where that core is. I've been to Bishop for other purposes to that old mine a number of years ago. That mine closed down, I think, in the early 80s, and the equipment, the facilities, and all the old records there are, to be quite frank, they're in a mess. I would and I suspect that core has been destroyed or buried in a heap somewhere.
Well, as always, it is safer than sorry, and at least with your own drill data, if there's any further work that you wish to be doing, obviously around those core samples, then you've got the option of doing it yourself. So,
well, exactly, and to come up with a resource on the Garnet deposit with no more than about half a dozen holes is an extraordinarily cheap program or cheap conversion from resource or exploration target to resource in anybody's language. So we'll spend in total on this drilling program probably about $250,000. Now that's not a lot of money, when you think of what the outcomes we confidently expect will be with Garnet, and what we have and what we seriously hope will be there with Desert Scheelite.
In regards to obviously all your targets, on your website you split them off into Tier 1 targets and Tier 2 targets. Due to the proximity between sort of garnet and the gunmetal, could you, or are you, sorry, going to be doing a drill program around both, or are you primarily going to concentrate on bringing each mine along as it comes?
Oh, look, we'll probably, almost certainly, we'll drill Garnet. We'll drill Garnet starting in the program next week, and we'll almost certainly drill gunmetal for the same with the same objective later on this year. What we elected to do was do a small program now. Thor has never drilled in this project before, and we will learn something about how we work in the area, possibly make mistakes, and learn a lot for the next drilling program. So we're going to do this drill program. We hope we will be encouraged to go back and do a lot more drilling at Desert Scheelite, and for that, but for that we will need to do the approved program and get the assays, and then hopefully have a reason to seek permits for to follow up extension work there, and when we do that, we will probably go back and also embark upon a similar program at gunmetal as we are doing now at Garnet. We chose Garnet this time in advance of gunmetal because access is a little bit easier this time of the year.
Excellent, and it sounds like you've got your ducks starting to line up in a row, and we'll look forward to the news flow coming up.
Well, I hope so. We will know relatively quickly whether we've got tungsten and mineralized sulfides in the cuttings from Desert Scheelite. We won't have assays for several weeks, I suspect, and I'm not sure of the assay turnaround time in the US at the moment. Hopefully, it's not too bad. But if we see some good-looking mineralisation in the drill cuttings, we'll let the market know as soon as we can.
Well, as it says on your website, you should potentially be having high-grade drill interceptions. So we'll look forward to hearing the news as and when it comes along, Mick.
Well, I hope I'm able to deliver that news sooner rather than later. Thank you, Stephen.
Is there anything further you'd like to add?
I think these are the essential points, Stephen. There'll be other opportunities with other things later on, and I sincerely hope.
Mick, it's been a pleasure speaking to you today. Thank you very much for your time, and enjoy what is left of your summer.
Thanks very much, Stephen. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you.